One of the signature promises of the Carney government is bringing down internal trade barriers within Canada. So just how much progress has been made on that front? For more on this, I want to bring in Daniel Tisch in Toronto. He's the president and CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce. And Daniel, thank you for taking the time. Appreciate this.
Hi, Andrew.
So here we are, the day after Canada Day. There was a campaign promise about kind of breaking down these interprovincial trade barriers, both from the provincial governments and at the federal level. Where are we right now?
Well, I think we're in a place that, frankly, I didn't think we'd be in 6 months ago, or even a year, or certainly not a year ago, right? I mean, for decades, we've been talking about internal free trade in Canada, right? The fact that internal trade, it's like a 21% tariff that's imposed by Canada on Canada. And, estimates vary, but, somewhere between 4 to 7% of GDP could rise if we actually got rid of all these barriers, right? It means more choice for consumers and lower prices. It means for business, a bigger pool of workers, bigger markets across the country. For workers, it's going where the jobs are. And for government, it's tax revenue that they can redistribute back to support business in transition or provide services that Canadians value. And I think that, we're making some really good progress. There's still a long way to go. The federal Bill 5 passed by Parliament, it lays the groundwork, but really it's the provinces that hold the keys to unlocking Canada's full economic potential here. And the good news is we're seeing a lot of movement among the provinces, led by Ontario, which is appropriate since it's the largest economy.
And so maybe tell us a little bit more about that. What kind of deals have been made? So is there truer, freer trade between Ontario and a number of provinces or other provinces with each other today than there was a few months ago?
Well, I think what we're seeing is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? We've taken first critical steps on this long journey, right? So Ontario has passed legislation to remove all of its exceptions to interprovincial trade and labor mobility. So previously currently under the Canada Free Trade Agreement, provinces and the federal government have to specify and outline when there's going to be an exception to free trade. And so a classic one is alcohol, right? There are restrictions on it. It's identified as an exception. So Ontario has basically said, we're removing all of our exceptions. But of course, the job isn't done there, right? There's still obviously inconsistent standards, right? So there are literally hundreds of standards around products, around safety regulations in different industries, around licensing of professionals. So whether it's the color of a safety vest, or what should be in a first aid kit, or what are the rules governing the weights on a truck, right? There's this complex web of different standards across the country. And so the first step is saying, we're removing our exceptions, right? The second step is saying we're going to recognize one another's standards, mutual recognition, but then we need the fine detail work of actually getting into the nitty-gritty, identifying the standards, identifying the barriers, and working together so that we actually are ensuring that the ultimate standards that we have in this country are high standards, as Canadians would expect and deserve.
Can I ask a simple question? I think it's kind of what people think about when they talk about this. When can people in Ontario get more BC wine at the liquor store?
That's well, and you know what? Sometimes it's the very simple examples that really drive change, right? Like the data may drive the mind, but the stories move the heart, right? And the gut. And absolutely, I think Ontario saying, we're opening up our interprovincial labor and our interprovincial alcohol market, that's a big step, right? And seeing BC and Alberta, came to a deal, to allow their consumers to sample each other's wines, to buy each other's wines. And so that's all good, because in the end, consumers deserve internal free trade between Canada. We deserve a choice, the best of the best from across the country, and our businesses deserve that too.
And just finally, I know you said it's really about the provinces, but has Mark Carney, has the Liberal government, have they fulfilled their campaign promise to remove the federal barriers that were there by Canada Day, which of course was yesterday?
Well, they have, but they can't just say we're now, our job's done and we're going to go away, right? I mean, nothing in this country happens unless the federal government and the provincial governments work together, for the most part, right? It's just very difficult for things to happen, in a federation otherwise. So we need them to work together, identify where are the quick wins, right? Work with business and affected industries. We need them to set timelines, set key performance indicators, ensure that there are systems to publicly and transparently report on progress. We need to work together on standards and defining what those standards are. And let's start with priority occupations and industries. Healthcare, right? We need more health professionals. There are all sorts of shortages across the country. Let's look at construction. Can we get more skilled tradespeople and engineers going where the jobs are, because that's what will build our economy.
Daniel, good to talk to you. Thank you. Daniel Tisch is the President and CEO of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce.
My pleasure.